Donald Trump says U.S. Marines have seized a vessel in the Gulf which tried to break the American blockade of Iranian ports. He's posted on social media that U.S. forces stopped the ship by blowing a hole in its engine room. It's not clear if there were any casualties. It comes ahead of a U.S. delegation, including the Vice President, visiting Pakistan for further talks with Iran as the end of their two-week ceasefire draws closer. Well, Lise Doucet is live in the Iranian capital for us and reporting on condition that none of her material is used on the BBC's Persian service. These restrictions apply to all international media organizations operating inside the country. Lise.
Well, it's still not clear what impact this U.S. seizure of an Iranian vessel in the Strait of Hormuz will have on those preparations for a second round of high-level talks. Iranian officials had already been responding with a stony silence to that swirl of media reports coming out of the United States that the talks would take place on Tuesday. But Iranian media linked to the powerful Islamic Revolutionary Guards had said no decision to attend would be taken as long as the U.S. maintained that naval blockade of Iran's ports. Now, last weekend in Islamabad, Iran waited until the 11th hour to confirm its attendance. But this time, the delay is about that strategic strait. And for Iran, it's a top issue at the talks. The calm waters of the world's most consequential battlefield, the Strait of Hormuz. Thousands of ships trapped, waiting for Iran to open this waterway, for the U.S. to end its naval blockade. Today, President Trump fired off another post. We are offering a very fair and reasonable deal, and I hope they take it, because if they don't, the United States is going to knock out every single power plant and every single bridge in Iran. No more Mr. Nice Guy. But there are growing voices here saying Tehran's presence in the strait is permanent. A leading lawmaker tells us it's an asset against the enemy. Will Iran ever give up its control of the Strait of Hormuz?
Certainly not. Certainly not. We believe this is our inalienable right. We are preparing a plan to be approved by Parliament with comprehensive regulations ruling passage through the strait to be implemented by the armed forces.
Even your neighbors, with whom you had good relations before the war, are saying this is international waters and this is an act of piracy.
Today, America is the world's biggest pirate.
Tehran, a city in waiting. Sanctions and war strangle this economy. Only a deal can end both. You feel it at this state pharmacy. People didn't want to speak to us on camera, but they told us they're paying more for their medicine. The drugs Iran produces are still in stock. But imported drugs are harder to find, including insulin. And there's another worry for some Iranians. Security has tightened. The eyes of the state are everywhere. There are people in the squares supporting the government, but there are also young Iranians being arrested in waves of arrests. There are young Iranians being executed for their part in the protests. And there's a fear that after the war is over, that this internal repression will get worse.
I think you probably haven't been given the correct analysis regarding the situation in Iran. We are at war. Even though there is a ceasefire and there are rules.
We do speak to young people here who tell us that they're still angry and pained by what happened in January, the crackdown which caused many thousands of deaths.
Today, Iran is a free country. It is very free.
The fate of this strait is a top issue in these talks, but there's a growing sense Tehran sees it not just as a bargaining chip, but long-term leverage it wants to keep. Lise Doucette, BBC News, Tehran.
Well, Simi Jalayoso is live in Washington for us now. Any more, Simi, on what happened with that Iranian vessel that was seized by the U.S. Marines in the Gulf?
Yeah, well, President Trump says U.S. Marines now have custody of that Iranian-flagged cargo ship that it seized in the Gulf of Oman after it tried to get past the American naval blockade there. He says a U.S. guided missile destroyer, the USS Spruance, issued a warning for the vessel to stop, and when it refused, blew a hole in the engine room. Now, President Trump has said that naval blockade will remain in place until a deal has been reached, and he's really dialed up his rhetoric again today, threatening to strike Iran's power plants and bridges. His latest threat raises the stakes. It risks creating a more volatile environment, especially when both the negotiations and the ceasefire appear quite fragile. Now, the coming days may be critical in determining whether diplomacy will hold, but the White House has framed this next round of talks as a sort of final diplomatic off-ramp before a potential return to a full-scale regional war.